So Rick Beato just released this video entitled Why Gen Z Doesn't Care About Music. Firstly, Gen Zs are a generation from about 1995, 1996 to around 2012. So I don't fall within that generation. I'm not even on the cusp of that generation. However, I need to acknowledge a few things. I'm taking on, speaking about a video of someone who's got 2.9 million subscribers. Rick Beato is amazing at what he does. I'm sitting here at 40,000, which is nothing by comparison. If you haven't gone and checked out Rick's YouTube channel, you need to. He's an amazing musician, a great educator, excellent content creator, and is constantly pumping out interesting, informative stuff, which is everything music. So I need to make something really clear here. I'm going to be talking about this based on my thoughts, and this is not a diss video in any respect, because I think it's important for me to say that I greatly respect Rick. However, there are some things I need to say about this. We will be looking at a couple of the points, and all of them I've striven to make sure that they are all correctly in their correct context. I don't want to take anything out of context on what Rick has said. I posted a link to the video in the description below if you want to check it out to confirm all that. So Rick's video has a very provocative title, Why Doesn't Gen Z Care About Music? And that made me want to click straight away, so kudos to him. But if we get down to the nitty gritty here, Rick's points are all anecdotal. They're all based on his opinions and what he's seen. So that being said, we actually won't really know if Rick's assessment on this is correct without actual empirical data to show that. So in saying that, my answers to some of these statements will be also anecdotal in nature, from a music teacher whose job is literally spending 5 to 6 hours a day with younger Gen Zs. So let's unpack this. Rick states the following in his video.
To classes, things like that. I interact with teenagers all the time. And the one thing that's really common is that many of them are not engaged at all with music. They just don't care about it. It just doesn't occupy any part of their day.
He does not, however, talk about what questions are asked and how they're phrased. This might be an unfair assumption from me, but I can only conclude from that Rick's experience with a range of students or children that age is superficial. And hopefully, if you're watching this, you will be able to take my opinion on somebody who spends 206 days a year with 1,000 children of that generation. So in going through Rick's video, I think this perfectly sums up his whole video and argument.
This is why kids that I meet, for most of them, are just not interested in music. They like video games. You know,
the focus of Rick's arguments is video games, to the exclusion of all possible other interests that children hold, to be the main factor on why kids these days don't care about music. In his video, Rick presents a few anecdotal reasons as to why he thinks this. Firstly, nostalgia.
When I was growing up, the way that we, our coming of age thing was buying records, and you would listen to these records all the way through. They're the things that you shared with your friends. You'd hang out and go over to your friend's house. You'd sit around in their basement and listen to records and talk and do things. And you develop all these memories that were associated with these songs at the time that you grew up with.
This is literally the old back in my day, a view which is actually tainted by the fondness of nostalgia. It is also part of the reason why each generation thinks that they're better than the upcoming ones. But I digress. I see this as an argument from emotion, which unfortunately may not be considering the views of the people he's actually talking about. Rick compares what was great about how him and his friends interacted with music in the 70s with how he feels that technology will affect the nostalgic feeling of kids today when they become adults.
But nowadays, kids, when they grew up, the Gen Z kids, they grew up with the internet, with Wi-Fi. They have only known a world of the internet, of gaming, of Wi-Fi, of interacting with things. While they're playing video games, they're on Discord and they're talking to their friends and they're all playing together.
This unfortunately falls short, as Rick is actually comparing his lived experience with other people's lived experience without consulting the people he's commenting on. Rick speaks about this technological age here as seemingly a bad thing. making assumptions that the nostalgia felt in the future for this generation will be, I guess, around their experiences with games and not with music. However, as I said, I'm going to be doing the anecdotal thing as well, and I'm going to be drawing from my experience as a music teacher. Different demographics yield different interests. And the kids that I currently work with, on the most part, have had little to no exposure to formal music education until they come into my class at around the age of 11 or 12. But some of the common features I find is that they do all have musical preferences. How do I know this? I don't actually ask them. Kids don't share these things. You can't just ask, hey, what kind of music do you like? This actually just catches them off guard, and the easiest answer for them is just a shrug or like, I don't know. They may even just say, I don't care. However, in the classroom, when procedural work is involved, I may suggest that we can play music while they're doing their work. In doing this, I send around a sheet of paper so that the kids can write down their song requests. Every time the paper is full. Every time. And we can never actually get through the entire song list. And take it from me, these are from students who are from a demographic that largely don't place value on music. So let's just bring it back to this point again of Rick's.
They have only known a world of the internet.
In stating this, Rick is forgetting what's also a part of this digital age. Vast access to music. Yes, TikTok might not be the Gen X's or millennials or boomers' choice, but undeniably, it's accessible. Whereas I discovered the latest pop music from the Top 50 weekly countdown back in the day, kids are discovering these songs through TikTok. So when we take this back to the music classroom, here's something accessible. Let's learn the melody on the keyboard of one of those songs. Maybe even the chord progression. And every time they see a song they recognize, they're ecstatic. Every time. Because it's relevant to them. Furthermore, let's actually look at an example of a style which connects with teenagers quite a lot nowadays. Teenage girls especially. K-pop. This is literally an entire subculture. These kids are learning to dance, to sing, to play their favorite K-pop songs. And yes, it's still music. Some of you may disagree because you're caught up again in your nostalgia and musical tastes, but this is music. Just like Rick, as he stated in the video, looks back at his hangouts in the basement with fond memories, listening to records with his friends back in the 70s. These kids will also look back at these associated musical experiences of this time with nostalgia. And that's just one that comes from the top of my head. I'm sure there are heaps more, but it's a really big, K-pop's a huge one that I can think of right now. So in addition to nostalgia, Rick seems to have this second reason that I have found as to why kids don't care about music. Kids have traded music for video games because of how addictive those video games are. Rick mentions this in his video.
This is really the question. What is it about it that makes it? And I'm not saying all kids, but a lot of kids. What is it about it? Is it just that video games that have this visual element to them that stimulates their brains, that they get this dopamine rush from doing these things or playing this stuff, from trying to get better at this?
He did cleverly say not all kids, but a lot of kids. But you can't measure this. How do you measure this? Kids don't have only one of two interests, video games or music. It's not one or the other. You know that. Rick knows that. Everyone knows that. But unfortunately, the way that this is conveyed is it's one or the other. Rick also draws on his experience and current experience with video games that he was playing with his kids, in that music didn't even occur to him when he was playing. Like he completely dismissed the fact that there was music.
I can understand why music doesn't play a role in kids' lives because of the addictive nature of these video games, right? It's really apparent to me because I have done it myself, and I know that music doesn't even occur to me when I'm playing these things. It's a single focus on the stuff. It's not like I don't understand what it's like to play video games.
This argument was made that if he himself is not registering the music, that means that the kids are not registering the music. Therefore, music is playing no role in their lives, if their lives are run by video games. The thing is, we know that music is there. The role of music is to enhance video games. It's the same thing in movies. Yes, we know there's music there, but do we notice it? Sometimes, sometimes not. It depends. Shopping centers, there's music playing. Music has its role. And in these specific circumstances, the role of music is not for enjoyment in the same way that it is when listening to it. So music has a role here. It does not mean that music doesn't play a role in these kids' lives just because you don't notice it in the video game. You're not meant to notice it, but you'd notice if it wasn't there. Another point.
Some of these video games have music in them, but do the kids really pay attention to music? Does it make them go out and seek out music afterwards? No, I don't think so. Not many of them.
Yes, literally they do. I have a piano student who loves gaming, and he comes to me with songs saying, can I learn this song? This is the song I want to do next. And he learns it. It's from the game that he likes. And the next point that I've identified as a reason for why Gen Z kids are not caring about music is that kids are not interpreting or reacting to music in the same way Rick did.
The thing that's interesting is that the kids now, they don't want to emulate musicians like I wanted to. I learned to play the guitar. Everyone I knew, it didn't matter if they were musicians or not, loved music. Jocks, freaks, whoever they were. Musicians, everybody liked music. They just did. I didn't know one person growing up that didn't like music. But most of the kids that I meet today, and many of them are not engaged at all with music. They just don't care about it.
Again, how is this gauged? Did you actually have a discussion with children where they were willing to answer about their preferences in music? Or do you just assume it because they play video games? If you did have a discussion with them, consider what I just said before. You can't just ask, hey, what kind of music do you like? This actually just catches them off guard, and the easiest answer for them is just a shrug or like, I don't know. If you ask them straight up to name their favorite songs, favorite bands, favorite style of music, favorite composer, whatever, they're going to most likely freeze up, which may be interpreted as they don't care.
But when I think about this, it's like, okay, what was it about music that grabbed me? What was it? Well, the people that I grew up listening to wrote their own music. It wasn't written by songwriters to make money.
This is, again, an assertion that music was more appealing when it was written by, I guess, a singer-songwriter or the performer. Maybe for you, because you're also partly basing it on nostalgia. From what I see as a teacher, children have always tried to put their earphones in, their AirPods in, have their Bluetooth speakers, and play music outside of the class or outside of the school. I've heard that. You hear that all the time. It happens. Look, again, in my experience, dealing with these kids every day. And finally, Rick actually moves away from his thesis discussing video games and states kids just don't want to take the time to learn these instruments. And then goes on to explain about YouTube tutorials and how they affect the learning of the kids who are taking them.
A lot of them develop their playing skills because of things like YouTube, because of tutorials. This is the tutorial generation, where they don't have to really have a good ear. All they have to do is be able to watch people play stuff, and they can do it.
And this is true. Like what he is saying is literally true. I actively discourage my students, my piano students, to be taking YouTube tutorials and learning songs through there. He's right. It does actually undermine your ear, and you're just literally parroting somebody else on the other end of the screen. But these kids whom I teach are in a position, the private ones, to own their own instrument and, of course, take the lessons one-on-one. That is, their parents are paying for them. However, if you make a claim saying...
And one of the things that kids, they just don't want to take the time to learn to play these instruments.
Which kids are you talking about? Are you talking about the kids from a single-parent family who can't afford an instrument or a lesson, let alone a nutritious meal? We cannot make a blanket statement about kids like this when we know that, quite frankly, music education and tuition is expensive. So really, these YouTube tutorials are actually a blessing for kids who in any other generation wouldn't have been able to pick up an instrument and start learning it and get the access to it. It's easier to save up for a family to buy a cheap secondhand guitar than it is to then pay for lessons weekly. So what I'm getting from this is kids are not interested in music these days, or kids don't care about music these days. But when they do, they don't learn it properly. Is that right? As I've said, the reason he gives against these YouTube tutorials, I am 100% agreeing and hold as true as well. They absolutely hinder your ear, your understanding of music theory. I hold these same views as a music educator. Rick then says that he does the same thing on his channel.
And anything they want to learn is on YouTube for free, right? I put out videos like that myself. I just did a video on a Larry Carlton and Jimi Hendrix thing, but I've got plenty of things to teach people how to play. My channel was built around that. Not how to play, but also the theory behind it.
I wholeheartedly, absolutely respect Rick Beato. Like, non-negotiable. He is amazing at what he does. But if it wasn't obvious already, I don't subscribe to the notion that Gen Z don't care about music. Video games have existed alongside music for at least half a century, with their accessibility pretty much being on par. Just as video games start becoming more accessible, music starts becoming more accessible. If Gen Zs were not interested in music, music tuition as a business would literally be in crisis. But this is not so. Good tutors are having to consistently turn down new students because they just can't fit them in. They don't have any time or space. And let's also consider the role of something like Disney, who consistently are bringing out relatable or good feature animated films, which are musicals, again connecting to kids, which in turn are also used on TikTok. Kids are singing this all the time in school. Take it from me. We don't talk about Bruno. Focusing on video games and how addictive they are as a reason for why you think that Gen Z doesn't care about music only considers one particular type of child and their specific interests, when we know there are so many more out there. I think that Rick wanted to, in doing this video, push out a video quite quickly which evoked discussion about this particular topic. This was an easy video for him to push out, as it most likely had little planning and no research. And to be fair, I didn't really have that much research in mine either. It was all anecdotal too. With this, just talking about his thoughts and opinions on Gen Z and music of today. And of course, he did leave it open to opinions in the end. And if you go through the comment section, you will find a ridiculous amount of people who are from that generation, of course, disagreeing. So watching this video leads me to believe that in Rick's mind, that kids of today largely don't have music at the center of their world. Whereas in reality, these kids have always existed, even in Rick's time. Rick just didn't know them. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time. It's not